The four of us moved silently through the dark tunnels of the dungeon. Rats squeaked and ran underfoot, and I began to see the shapes of them as my eyes adjusted. Finally, after walking for a long while, there was a flickering light up ahead. As we approached, I saw two guards standing in front of a wrought iron gate. Once we were within a few yards of them, I managed to see their grim visages. They had no flesh upon their faces. I could see right into the skeletal remains of their skulls, and could discern no brains within them, only shadows. Perhaps that explains what happened next. "Who goes there?" the one on the right commanded. Hello," I said. "Jordan, and Noel, Brad, and Tom. Can we go through the gate, please? We're trying to get home." "Oh? Well, aren't you a gracious bunch? They're very polite, Gregor. I don't think we've ever had ones who said please before." "Well, I can't see why an exception can't be made now and again." "It isn't up to you. We've been over this before." They continued bickering back and forth for a minute, and I got a bit concerned. The skeleton guards had thick plate mail armor and large, heavy-looking swords. I guess they would be formidable foes, despite their obvious lack of gray matter. "I just want to say, you guys are doing an excellent job," I coax, trying to persuade them with further kindness. "And if I run into your manager further along in the dungeon, I'm gonna pass along my positive comments to him. You can count on that." "Really?" the one on the left raised his eyebrows. "Definitely. I'd say you're both due for a promotion." "See?" said the one on the right. "Let's just let them through. They'll put in a good word for us." He said it himself. No one's ever put in a good word for us before. They opened the gate for us without further discussion, and we walked through it. "Be careful, Gregor," the skeleton guard said from behind us. "There are booby traps everywhere, and enemies around every corner." The shrill scream echoed out through the dungeon once again. It sounded so familiar, like a woman I knew. "Who is that screaming?" I asked them. The skeleton guards chuckled. "Why don't you ask your friend?" I looked over to see Brad standing there with tears in his eyes. He was shaking his head and saying, "Sorry," over and over. "What did you do, Brad? What did you do?" "It wasn't my fault. I found the game, I opened it up, and I looked at a card. I just wanted to see what it would say." "And what did it say?" Noel asked. "The game's begun, it's all in motion. So find some friends and drink the potions. Find the one the goblins stole, before we eat her heart and soul. Get to the finish, save dear mother. For one does not receive another." We stared at him, still not comprehending what he was telling us. I went upstairs and my mom was gone. She was just gone. I think that's her screaming. I think maybe goblins took her. I went upstairs, and my mom was gone. She was just gone. I think that's her screaming. I think maybe goblins took her. "When were you going to tell us this?" Noel was yelling, grabbing him and shaking him angrily. "You knew this game was evil, and you brought us all into it." The board game was a medieval fantasy-themed one, called Dungeons and Darkness. But now it wasn't a board game at all. Now we were inside of it. As totally batshit as that sounds. I didn't know this was going to happen. How could I have possibly known? Before we could argue any further, the wall behind us to our right collapsed in with an explosion of fire. We all backed up quickly and ducked as stone blocks went flying, landing all about the tunnel with loud crashes and bangs. Suddenly a figure in a blue robe came flying in through the hole. His body flew through the air and collided with great force against a brick wall on the other side. He landed on the floor in a heap and groaned. "That damn dragon," he was muttering as he stood up, dusting himself off. "Oh, hello boys. Long time, no see." "Hey, it's the wizard," I shouted, happy he was back. He was the first person we had seen in this strange fantasy world, and he had seemed decent enough, even if he had been in a bit of a hurry. "Oh man, can you help us get out of here?" Noel asked. "And rescue my mom?" The wizard wrung his hands, and made a few uncertain noises. Then he sighed resignedly, and picked up his staff. I mean, I can try. I'm not the best wizard. I use a lot of red potions. But I can usually get the job done. He glanced back at the hole in the wall, still smoking, the edges of it burnt and charred. Usually. We continued along with the blue wizard leading the way. The jewel atop his wooden staff glowed with a white light which proved quite useful in the darkness. The challenges become more difficult in these dungeons the further along you get. What stage did you get up to before I joined you? We just came in the entrance. I kinda sweet talked the guards. Complimented them on there. I'm not really sure, they weren't the brightest. Ha! Clever boy. Paladins are typically quite charismatic. Well done using it to your advantage. I thought back to my character card when we had begun to play the game. Charisma had been one of my skills, as well as one-handed combat. I mentioned this to the others. It seemed we had some advantages over our foes here after all, if we used them correctly. 2 flickering torches flanked another door up ahead, and we prepared ourselves for what would come next. The wizard went through first and the rest of us followed. Immediately, the gate clanged shut with a loud noise behind us, and we found ourselves trapped in an octagonal chamber. Okay, from my experience, the first stage is almost always spiders. There were dozens of them. Huge black spiders the size of dogs and cats. They descended from the ceiling and I saw one land on the wizard's hand and bite him. Green venom oozed from the wound, and he screamed in pain. Immediately he fell to the ground rigid and paralyzed, frozen in the exact way he had been standing before being bit by the spider. Foam poured out from the side of his mouth, and I heard him gurgling. At least he was still alive. Some help he was going to be, I thought to myself. I saw that Tom was already swinging his axe in wide circles, taking out several spiders at a time with his huge weapon. Armor protected him head to toe, and I saw him make short work of the spiders in one corner of the room. Brad the elf was picking off others with his bow, shooting them with effortless skill, as his character sheet had promised. Each spider he killed fell from its silken thread oozing fluorescent green blood which glowed and lit the room in an eerie light. Noel the barbarian was swinging his club and crashing it against the wall, crushing giant spiders with ease. One landed on his shoulder, though, and before he could knock it away it had bitten him, rendering him paralyzed as he twitched on the floor alongside the blue wizard. Only Tom, Brad, and I were left, and another spider suddenly lowered itself down from the ceiling. This spider was much larger than the others had been. Instead of being the size of a cat or a dog, this spider was the size of a small pickup truck. Its giant fangs protruded and its many eyes looked at us hungrily. Hairy legs skittered on the stone floors as it prepared to attack. Other, smaller spiders came down from the ceiling as well, flanking it on both sides. My heart was pounding with fear as I stared at the massive spider. I knew we wouldn't be able to take it down without everyone's help. And 2 of our party members were currently incapacitated. That was when I remembered the red potions Noel had taken from the shop. He had thrown them in the backpack and I ran over and opened it up. I popped off the stopper on the first red potion, and poured it into Noel's mouth, glancing towards the giant spider as it began to move towards us. My hand was trembling with terror as I tossed another red potion to Tom. He poured it into the paralyzed wizard's mouth, while Brad continued to fire arrows with lightning quickness at the smaller spiders closing in on us. His quiver seemed to never run out of arrows. The blue wizard sprang to his feet, red liquid staining his teeth and lips as he grinned ear to ear. Oh man, that red potion is good. Gotta be careful with it though. Can be quite habit-forming for an adventurer in dungeons above his skill level. He shouted lightning bolts, and a bolt of lightning jumped out from his staff, striking the giant spider dead center. It sizzled and smoked as the buzz of static electricity and the boom of crashing thunder echoed in the small space, momentarily deafening me and causing my ears to ring. With all the spiders dead, the gate ahead rattled up and opened of its own volition, revealing the passageway beyond. Stage 1, said the wizard. Piece of cake. He walked forward as Noel struggled to his feet. The blue wizard stopped and looked back at us. Before we go any further, there's one more question I have to ask of you. We nodded our heads, looking at him solemnly. Do you have any more red potions? Because we are definitely going to need them.